So now we're going to talk about something called lists in Haskell, and lists are a way to store a large amount of data. So for example, let's say we had student test scores, right? And we could use variables, sure. We could say score 1, maybe that's the first score of the first student is 79%. And then score 2 is like 83%. And then score 3 is this guy aced it and got 100%. 3 students, that's great. We could go underneath main equals do here and we could use print. We could print score 1, we could print score 2, right? And we could print score 3. But now let's suppose, right, that we don't have 3 students in our class. We're in a college setting and it's an intro to whatever class, and they have 150 students. Well, do I really want to type out score 1, score 2, score 3, score 4, a whole way to score 150? That's an awful lot of typing. We can use what's called a list to make this easier. So in a list, instead of doing this, 79, 83, 100, we can do scores. We'll just call it scores. And these are the student scores, right? And we might have a score of 79. And to make a list, you use these brackets, these open and close brackets. And we can say 79, comma, 83, comma, 100. And this is a list of, and we've talked about this data type before. Think about it for a second, right? This is a list of integers. And we can, of course, create a type for this in a similar way we used to do, right? So we would say if it was just a score, right? If it was the initial, if it was this, if it was score 1 equals 79, then we would say score is of type what? It's a type int, remember? So we do score is an int, and then we say, hey, we're going to store 79 inside of score 1. So score 1 is an int. But now we have a list of these integers. So our type for this list of integers, we could say scores equals, not equals, colon, and we're going to do the same thing kind of that we did below. It's an array, or a list of ints. So this is now the type. There's multiple ints inside of these brackets, inside of the list. So up top, we say, hey, there's going to be a bunch of ints inside of these brackets or a list, and that's our type. So that's how we make types for this list. And then, so let's do something with the list down in this main function, right? Let's suppose we wanted to print each item of this list. There's only 3 right now. So we could say print, because if it's not a string, we have to print it. And we want to print the first item of this list, and in this case it's 79, right? And we're going to get this by accessing the index of the list. Now a list has indexes, right? And each item in the list is at a specific index. List indexes always start at 0, so 79 is at index 0, 83 is at index 1, and 100 is at index 2. It's kind of counterintuitive to how we would count it, right? We would say 1, 2, 3, but in Haskell, it's 0, 1, and 2. So we know 79 is at the 0th index, and we want to access that particular score. So to do that, there's some special syntax for that. We're going to print it also. So if we want to print something, we can leave a space and then type out what we want to print. In our case, we're going to use parentheses also, for a little more clarity. So we can say print scores, and we want to get the 0th item in the scores. And to do that, there's this syntax of the exclamation point operator. We need 2 of them. And we want the 0th index of the scores. So it's going to go up here to scores, and it's going to find whatever is at the 0th index, in this case 79. So you can imagine this gets replaced with 79, and then it prints it to the console. Let's save it and try it. Here we go. Clear, reload, and run, and we get 79. Let's try and print now the last item in this list, right? So scores, and we have the last item here, which is 100. So it's at what index? 0, 1, 2. It's at the 2nd index, right? So we can say scores, exclamation, exclamation, 2. And sometimes this is the bang operator. People call this, this exclamation point, they call it the bang operator. So I'll say scores bang bang 2. and we're going to get the second item in the scores list, and then we're going to print it to the console. So Control S to save, clear it, reload, and run, and we get 100. Now let's talk about a few built-in list functions. Okay, so now let's add a few more scores to our scores list. So we could say like 92, maybe somebody bombed the test and got a 56, 74. So now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 list items here, right? 6 integers inside of our list. Now this type still stays the same, right? Because there's still a bunch of ints inside of our list. So the type stays the same. And now we want to talk about a few built-in functions that come with Haskell for lists. So let's suppose we just want to get the first item of the list. We already said we could do print scores bang bang 0, but there's another way we can do this. We could say print, and we could use what's called the head function. So we could say head of scores, and head will grab the first item of the list of the scores list. So we pass scores to head, it grabs the first item, 79, and then it prints it to the console. And remember, print will evaluate all of this after this is done. So Control S to save. Head over here, excuse me, clear it, refresh, run it, and we get 79, right? Couple more built-in functions, 2 more. The next one we want to talk about is, so we have head and then we have last. So last. And so it's going to grab exactly what it says, the last one of the list, so 74, and it's going to print that to the console. So save, clear it, refresh, and play, and it prints 74 to the console. So now we have 2 more. The next one's called init, and init is going to print everything except for the last one. So it's going to print 79, 83, 192, and 56. And it's okay to do, it's okay to print something that's not an int. We can print all these, and it's going to just return a list of all of these things. So it's going to grab all 5 of those except for the last one, and it's going to print them to the console. Save it. And there we have it. It prints everything except the last one. And one more function that's built in just to get us going, and that's tail. So tail, if you've been following the pattern, it's going to print everything except the first one. So save it, clear, refresh, and run it, and you're going to see it prints everything except the first item of the list. So those are a few built-in list functions. Let's keep going.